What if I told you the most dangerous thing Henry VIII ever wrote wasn't a law, or a decree, or a death warrant? It was a love letter. 8 years before Anne Boleyn walked onto a scaffold, the King of England was writing to her like a man with no crown at all, obsessive, desperate, and quietly humiliating. Letters so intimate that if they had been read aloud in court, Henry's authority would have cracked in half. And yet they survived. Stolen, smuggled, locked away for centuries, far beyond Henry's reach, like a sealed confession from a man who would later claim God gave him the right to kill. Because inside those pages, Henry isn't a legend, he's a warning. So, if you're here for history's darker truths, the ones polished over in textbooks, subscribe. You're about to see what those letters really reveal about the king who broke an entire kingdom just to possess one woman and then destroy her when she stopped being useful. Now imagine a vault deep inside the Vatican archives stone. Cold. Silent. The kind of place where secrets go to die. Among banned manuscripts and royal confessions sits something almost absurd: 17 love letters from Henry VIII. 17 letters from the most powerful man in England, and not a single surviving reply from Anne. That detail alone should make your skin crawl, because that silence suggests a terrifying possibility. Henry erased her voice on purpose. After her execution, he could burn her words, destroy her presence, wipe her side of the story clean. But he couldn't reach what had already vanished into enemy hands. And those letters, his letters, tell a story he would have done anything to bury. How did they end up in Rome? One chilling theory is betrayal. Someone close to Anne, someone she trusted, quietly feeding information to the Vatican. Couriers intercepted, copies made, private promises turned into intelligence. The Pope wanted to understand the mind of the king, dragging England away from Catholic authority, and these letters gave him a front row seat to Henry's unraveling. Because when you read what Henry wrote, you don't see romance, you see obsession developing in real time. In one letter, Henry admits he's been struck with the dart of love for over a year of nights spent awake, consumed by a woman who wouldn't let him have what he wanted most. And the tone is what makes it disturbing. There's no command, no royal certainty. No, I am the king. Instead, it's begging. He writes like a man starving for approval, like a servant hoping for scraps. He confesses how long it has been since he kissed her, like he's keeping score of his own humiliation. And it gets even stranger. Henry doesn't just write, he decorates. He draws. He repeats their initials H and A intertwined again and again, as if ink could bind her to him. Hearts appear in the margins like a lovesick boy trying to make his feelings permanent. But tucked inside the sweetness, the mask slips. He doesn't hide what he wants. He's explicit, physical, impatient. One infamous line has Henry saying he wants to kiss her pretty duckies, a term used as slang for a woman's breasts. Picture that for a second. The supreme lord of the realm writing something that intimate, sending it by messenger across the countryside, risking exposure because desire made him reckless. If enemies had intercepted the wrong letter at the wrong time, it could have shattered him. But the obsession was stronger than the risk. And here's what makes Anne Boleyn so fascinating, because she understood something Henry didn't. Men who can have everything only crave what they can't. Anne had watched what happened to women who gave the king what he wanted too easily. Her own sister, Mary Boleyn, had been Henry's lover, and when he grew bored, Mary was discarded. No lasting protection, no permanent power, barely a public memory. Anne learned from that. So when Henry offered her the role, no one refused mistress. Secret possession. Anne did something almost suicidal. She said no, not no forever. No, until you marry me. That wasn't romance. It was strategy. A woman without an army forcing the most powerful man in Europe to play by her rules? She reframed the offer so she didn't insult him, but she changed the game. And Henry, completely unprepared for a woman who wouldn't submit, spiraled. His letters grew frantic, insecure, needier. At one point, he practically begs her to clarify where he stands, asking for her whole mind about the love between them. Imagine that. The man who could order an execution with a sentence, pleading with a woman to tell him if she even cares. That was Anne's power. And it's also the kind of power a man like Henry could never forgive. Because Henry didn't just want love. He wanted control. And Anne kept him waiting. Months became years, 7 years, according to many accounts of gifts, poems, and promises, while a king cracked his own kingdom open because one woman refused to be conquered without a crown. Then fate sharpened the obsession into something darker. In 1528, Anne caught the sweating sickness, an illness that struck fast and killed without mercy. Henry panicked, not like a monarch managing a crisis, but like an addict watching his fix disappear. He sent his best physician. He wrote in terror. He claimed he'd rather suffer the illness himself than lose her. Beneath the romance was the truth. He hadn't owned her yet, and she might die before he ever could. Anne survived, and Henry learned a new lesson. He couldn't allow the world or God or death to take away what he'd decided belonged to him. So, he escalated. When the Pope refused to grant an annulment from Catherine of Aragon, Henry didn't retreat. He didn't accept no. He declared he didn't need the Pope. He severed England from Rome, built a new church with himself at the top, and rewrote the spiritual laws of an entire nation, all to fulfill one promise. Anne would be his wife. His queen. Think about what that means. Those letters aren't just embarrassing romance. They're early symptoms of a mindset that turns lethal. If I can't have what I want by permission, I'll take it by force. In January of 1533, Henry and Anne married in secret. By June, she was crowned. The chase was over. And that's when obsession begins to rot. The letters fade. The warmth cools. What remains is expectation, and expectation is cruel. Henry didn't want a wife. He wanted an heir, a son, proof that God approved of everything he'd done. Anne gave him a daughter, Elizabeth. Not enough. Miscarriages followed. Pressure tightened. By January 1536, everything broke. Henry suffered a brutal jousting accident, thrown unconscious for hours. Anne was pregnant again, and the shock pushed her into a miscarriage. Some reports claim the baby was a boy. The son, Henry, demanded, lost. Whether the details were propaganda or not, the effect was real. Henry's belief snapped into place. He told Anne coldly that God did not approve of their marriage, and he began looking for a door out. That door had a name, Thomas Cromwell. It started like political murder often starts quietly. A whisper. A careless remark. A frightened woman trying to divert scandal. What I did is nothing compared to what the Queen does. Cromwell heard opportunity and moved fast. Investigations weren't built to discover truth, they were built to manufacture it. Servants questioned. Courtiers pressured. Men taken from Anne's circle. Accusations stacked higher and uglier. Adultery with multiple men. Incest with her brother. Conspiracy to kill the king. Absurd. Contradictory. Impossible timelines. But Henry didn't need believable. He needed final. On May 2nd, 1536, Anne was arrested and taken to the Tower of London, the same place she had once stayed before her coronation. History loves symmetry. Tyrants love it even more. The trials became theater. Verdicts were pre-written. The men accused with Anne were executed. Anne was convicted and sentenced to burn or behead at the king's pleasure. Henry chose beheading. A French swordsman was hired for a cleaner strike, and Anne shockingly thanked him for the mercy. Not because Henry was merciful, but because in Henry's England, even your last words had to protect the people you left behind, especially your child. On May 19th, Anne stepped onto the scaffold at Tower Green. A small, controlled crowd. No public mob. No riot risk. Just a carefully staged killing inside the walls. Anne spoke calmly. She praised the king. She avoided declaring innocence in a way that could endanger Elizabeth. It was her last act of strategy, her final attempt to keep her daughter alive. Then, the blindfold, the kneel, the prayer. The executioner called out for the sword as a distraction. Anne turned her head instinctively, and the blade ended it in one stroke. Here's the part Henry didn't count on. You can erase a woman from your court. Carve her initials off walls. Burn portraits. Destroy letters. Declare the marriage invalid. The daughter illegitimate. The whole story, a mistake that never happened. But you can't erase the truth of what you revealed about yourself, because somewhere beyond Henry's reach, 17 letters survived. And they expose the pattern, a king who confuses desire with destiny. A man who reads no as an insult. A ruler who would rather destroy the world than feel weak. Henry didn't love Anne Boleyn the way we like to imagine love. He needed her. He wanted to own her. And when the chase ended, when she could no longer give him the son he believed he was owed, the obsession didn't turn into heartbreak. It turned into rage. That's what those letters really reveal. Not romance. A blueprint. So, tell me in the comments, do you think Anne controlled Henry? Or did Henry control Anne the moment she said yes? And if you want more stories where history's love is really power-wearing perfume, subscribe, because the next story is even darker.